Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We have got a really fascinating topic lined up for you.
We really do. Usually when we talk about scaling up a massive organization or, starting a huge movement, there's this underlying assumption that you just have to embrace automation.
Right, like the factory mindset.
Exactly. You build the initial prototype by hand,
Right.
and you pour all your energy into those first few iterations. But to reach thousands of people, conventional wisdom says you have to remove the human element. You have to standardize.
It basically becomes algorithmic by necessity. Because, well, the ultimate goal of any large operation defaults to efficiency, right? And human beings are just inherently inefficient.
Oh, totally. Because the human touch simply does not scale. It is messy. It takes way too much time to deal with individual quirks and, everyday problems.
And we really can't ignore the fact that it's exhausting. We gravitate toward rigid systems because they can basically run themselves. They don't demand constant draining emotional investment from whoever is sitting at the top of the org chart.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate leadership dilemma. But today's notes for our deep dive focus on a 19th century educator named Don Bosco. And he completely inverted this factory model.
He really did. It's fascinating.
They have these 6 isolated snapshots of his life that challenge everything we think we know about leadership, mentorship, and education. These sources outline 6 distinct events that all took place on or around the exact same day in the calendar.
July 23rd, right?
Yep, July 23rd. But they span this massive 30-year period, from 1856 all the way to 1886.
Which is such a unique way to look at history. It's essentially like taking a core sample of a glacier, but, for a person's life and career. We get to see these isolated slices of July 23rd across 3 different decades.
Wow, yeah, that's a great analogy.
And when you stack them up and analyze the layers, a surprisingly clear picture emerges. So our mission for you today, as the listener, is to extract the historical lessons for modern students, teachers, and leaders.
Yeah.
We're going to analyze Don Bosco's unique leadership style, his extremely hands-on early educational guidance, and crucially, how he managed to balance massive, societal-level administrative challenges with deeply intimate personal relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how Don Bosco eventually tackled those giant, large-scale societal issues, we first need to look at how he handled his most basic responsibility.
Mentoring individual pupils.
Exactly. Just the grassroots stuff.
I have to start at the foundational level of his educational philosophy. So in 1856, around July 23rd, Don Bosco is on a spiritual retreat at St. Ignatius's shrine.
And just to pause on that, if you're on a spiritual retreat in the 19th century, the whole point is unplugging from the world, right? You're taking a deliberate break from the day-to-day grind to just reflect.
That's the idea, yeah.
Instead of doing that, the sources note that he is actively writing a letter to a young student of his named John Cagliero.
Right. Even in total isolation, his focus remains entirely on the development of his students. So he writes to Cagliero specifically to express his approval of the young man taking time for piano and organ practice.
Which is nice.
It is, but he doesn't just send a generic note of encouragement. He couples this validation with a very practical, almost demanding reminder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he tells Cagliero that his methodology course needs to fit in seamlessly with his philosophy studies.
Oh, man. It honestly reminds me of a modern-day academic advisor trying to gently rein in a brilliant but super distracted student.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the exact type we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The highly ambitious student whose extracurricular activities are suddenly threatening to tank their GPA. It's the classic, hey, great job leading the intramural volleyball team, but do not forget, you still need to pass organic chemistry.
Yes, that is the exact dynamic.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second. Checking in on one kid's organ practice seems completely unsustainable. If you have hundreds of kids in your care, how does this level of intense, micro-level involvement translate?
It sounds impossible, right?
Yeah. Didn't this guy just burn himself out trying to micromanage everyone's homework?
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of trust that he's building.
Right.
When we look closely at that 1856 letter, it isn't just about scheduling or academic micromanagement.
Okay.
It is basically a masterclass in how to build genuine influence. Don Bosco's educational guidance was deeply rooted in authentic affection rather than rigid, authoritative detachment. By taking the time to validate something the student clearly cares deeply about, like Cagliero's piano and organ practice, Don Bosco earns the right to challenge him on the harder, less glamorous stuff, like aligning those methodology and philosophy studies.
Okay, so the organ practice is the hook.
Yeah.
It's his way of saying, I see you as a whole person, not just a metric on a report card.
Exactly. That hyper-personalized approach wasn't a distraction from his leadership strategy. It was the entire foundation of it. And we see this scale up slightly if we look at another July 23rd event.
Let's hear it.
In 1861, so 5 years later, he is at St. Ignatius' shrine again for his annual retreat, and this time he sends a letter back to be read aloud to all the boys at the oratory.
And just for context for you listening, when the sources mention the oratory, we're talking about a place that was essentially a hybrid youth center, school, and safe haven that Don Bosco ran for disadvantaged and at-risk boys in Turin. It was a massive undertaking.
A huge undertaking, yeah, filled with young people who desperately needed stability. And when you look at the tone of the 1861 letter he sends to them, he writes to tell them how much he misses them.
Wow.
Yeah, he explicitly points out that he has only been away for a few days, yet the separation is difficult for him. And wrapped inside that vulnerability and affection, he then urges them to remain steadfast in their spiritual and academic duties.
I mean, I get the piano practice letter to one student, but sending an I miss you terribly letter to an entire school after being gone for a weekend is wild to think about from a modern administrative perspective.
It really is.
Most headmasters or principals rely on distance to maintain authority, They need to be the objective, slightly intimidating figure at the front of the room to keep order.
Right, the enforcer.
Exactly. Don Bosco is essentially saying, because we have this deep emotional bond, I'm asking you to stay on the right path. It's relationship-based compliance. You do your work because you genuinely do not want to let down someone who cares about you that much.
Which flips the traditional model of authority entirely on its head. For anyone in leadership or education today, this is a profound historical lesson. We often assume that establishing authority requires creating an emotional buffer.
Yeah, keeping a professional distance.
Right, but Don Bosco proved the exact opposite. His vulnerability and intense personal involvement actually fueled his authority.
But, a leader can only write so many heartfelt letters before the sheer volume of students and institutional problems overwhelms the system.
That's usually the breaking point.
Right. And this exact crisis actually hit the local church leadership just a year prior to that oratory letter. Let's look at the sources for 1860, because this is where the narrative shifts from grassroots mentoring to top-level administration.
The transition that breaks most leaders.
Exactly. So in 1860, the Archdiocesan Seminary was facing potential closure. They simply did not have enough students enrolling.
Right.
And again, just to clarify for the listener, a seminary back then wasn't just a niche religious school. It was the training ground for future local leaders and priests. It was a vital community institution.
Very high stakes.
Absolutely. So the vicar general, who is essentially the bishop's right-hand man, the top administrator in the region, comes to Don Bosco and urges him to take over the direction of this seminary to, quote, breathe new life into it.
He is basically being asked to execute a rescue mission for a failing institution.
Yeah. And if you're brought in as a fix-it CEO for a failing institution, your mandate is ruthlessness. You cut programs, you restructure, you recruit aggressively. You literally do not have time to hold hands.
Right.
How on earth does a guy who micromanages a student's philosophy homework suddenly pivot to saving a whole regional training center? And it doesn't stop there. By the time we hit the notes from 1884, he is operating on a national scale. Writing from Turin, Don Bosco sends a formal memorandum to Minister Zenardelli.
So we've moved all the way from individual tutoring to institutional turnaround to direct political lobbying with a government minister.
It's crazy. He proposes a project to the government to open hostels for the prevention of juvenile delinquency. His stated goal in the memo is to care for boys exposed to moral danger, and in doing so, increase the ranks of law-abiding citizens.
Right.
He is functioning exactly like a modern, non-governmental organization trying to secure state backing. Wait, this is where I'm struggling to connect the dots. You cannot run an NGO or lobby a politician the same way you mentor a teenager. The skill sets seem totally opposed.
It definitely looks that way from the outside.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Is there an inherent tension here between being a grassroots, hands-on mentor and operating as a high-level administrator dealing with government ministers and struggling institutions?
Yeah.
It just feels like those two worlds should inevitably collide.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we actually discover that for Don Bosco, there was no collision at all.
Really?
Yeah, there was no tension between those roles because he viewed his administrative challenges as simply a scaling up of his individual mentorship.
But lobbying a minister requires such a different approach than asking a kid how his piano practice is going. I mean, they're two different languages.
On the surface, sure, the venue has changed, but the core philosophy hasn't. Look at the specific language he uses in that 1884 memorandum to Minister Zanardelli. He is advocating for hostels for the prevention of juvenile delinquency.
No.
He isn't pitching the construction of new prisons, and he isn't using cold bureaucratic statistics about crime rates to make his point. He explicitly talks about caring for boys exposed to, quote, moral danger.
Oh, wow. Think about how wild that is. Imagine a modern CEO or NGO director trying to pitch a structural reform to a senator, but using the exact same emotional vocabulary they use when talking to their own teenager or their students.
It almost never happens today.
No. We are so trained to compartmentalize our language. Corporate speak for the boardroom, empathy for the classroom. He refused to separate them.
Exactly. He viewed saving institutions like breathing new life into the 1860 seminary and advising government ministers as just another, much larger way to care for youth.
It's just a bigger classroom for him.
Right. He did not abandon his core educational philosophy to play politics. He recognized that if you truly care about the micro-level well-being of a young person, eventually you are forced to address the macro-level systems that are threatening them.
That is a crucial takeaway for you if you're listening and trying to navigate your own career progression. Because sometimes moving up into administration or middle management feels like you are selling out or like you're abandoning the real work on the ground with the people you want to help.
It's a very common fear.
Yeah.
Right.
But Don Bosco saw structural reform as a strict prerequisite for individual care. You cannot protect the student if the society surrounding them is failing.
Precisely. His goal was to increase the ranks of law-abiding citizens, not through punitive measures or strict policing, but by building comprehensive environments where young people could thrive safely. The systemic change he lobbied for was always in service to the individual child.
So he pulls off this incredible, almost paradoxical balancing act. He is writing letters about methodology courses. He is turning around failing seminaries to appease the vicar general. And he is lobbying government ministers to fund youth hostels.
That's a lot.
Carrying that level of responsibility across multiple decades sounds like a recipe for a catastrophic breakdown.
Oh, the sheer weight of that administrative burden would crush almost anyone's capacity for empathy over a 30-year span.
Which leads us perfectly into the final part of our deep dive today. We've explored the immense scale of his institutional burdens and his political lobbying. But what was the long-term emotional payoff of this incredibly demanding leadership style? Let's look at how he maintained his personal relationships decades into his career, when he arguably had the most to lose and the least amount of free time.
We finally get to examine the endurance of his personal touch.
Right. Let's look at the source notes from July 23, 1883. This is almost 30 years after that initial letter advising John Cagliero on his piano practice.
30 years, that's a lifetime in leadership.
It really is. So Don Bosco is attending a special reunion at the oratory. And the sources specify this isn't just a general gathering, it's a reunion for clergy alumni. These are grown men, ordained priests, who were once his young pupils.
Right, these are men who were entirely shaped by his specific, highly personalized brand of mentorship, and now they are returning as adults.
Yes. And during what the notes describe as a brotherly banquet, Don Bosco leans over and whispers to one of them, a Father Revilio. He tells him that these priests, his former students, were the apple of my eye.
The apple of my eye. I mean, even after decades of institutional battles, that phrasing is just incredibly tender and deeply personal.
So what does this all mean? We have this historical figure who has fundamentally altered the educational landscape of his region, dealt with high-level ministers, saved seminaries from collapse, and yet, sitting at a banquet in 1883, his focus is entirely on the immense affection he holds for his former students. Does this 1883 reunion, paired with the sheer endurance of his affection, prove that true leadership isn't really about the physical programs you build, but the sustained relationships you cultivate along the way?
Well, this raises an important question about how we measure the legacy of a leader, because modern society often measures historical figures by the physical institutions they left behind.
Right, the buildings with their names on them.
Exactly. The seminaries they saved, the hostels they built, the laws they changed. But Don Bosco's life suggests a totally different metric for success. Despite his massive administrative challenges and societal reforms, he never let the scale of his work erode his capacity for human connection.
He refused to become an algorithm. He didn't let the factory mindset win.
He absolutely rejected it, and we see this confirmed one final time in the last source note from 1886.
Oh, the visit from the bishop.
Yeah.
Yes, this perfectly encapsulates how he operated at the highest levels.
Right, so in 1886, while staying at the oratory, Don Bosco receives a visit from Bishop Philip Chiesa of Pinerolo. Now, this was not a formal ecclesiastical audit or a stiff bureaucratic meeting.
No clipboards involved.
No clipboards. The historical notes specifically mention that Bishop Chiesa was a close friend who had frequently hosted Don Bosco at his own villa in the past. The bishop came to the oratory specifically to check on the saint's failing health and offer his continued hospitality and support.
Just think about the level at which these two men are operating. You have a bishop and a legendary educator, two men carrying the weight of massive institutional survival on their shoulders.
High stress all the time.
Their schedules must have been an absolute nightmare. And yet the core of their interaction in 1886 is just friendship. It is literally one buddy checking in on another buddy's health.
It really highlights how exceptionally rare it is for leaders to retain deep, authentic, brotherly bonds when they reach those heights of power. Leadership at that scale is notoriously isolating.
Yeah, it's lonely at the top.
You're surrounded by people who want things from you. But Don Bosco built a life where he was surrounded by enduring friendships, whether it was former pupils like Father Revilio returning to honor him, or peers like Bishop Chiesa offering a place to rest.
It's like he built an entire ecosystem of affection that ultimately sustained him. He poured so much personalized, micro-level care into his students early on, like we saw in those letters from 1856 and 1861 and decades later. That exact same care is reflected back to him by his alumni and his peers.
Yes, exactly.
It was not a one-way street of him just giving energy until his battery was empty. He created a reciprocal community.
And that reciprocal community is the mechanism that prevented him from burning out, despite the administrative mountains he was forced to move year after year.
So if we are distilling the ultimate historical lessons for you, the listener, from this incredible stack of notes, it's this. Don Bosco's timeline proves that the absolute best educational models and really the best leadership models in any field require balancing micro-level care with macro-level vision.
Absolutely. You have to care deeply about a single student's piano practice and methodology course, but you also have to possess the courage to challenge the societal structures that put youth in moral danger in the first place.
You have to be willing to write a heartfelt letter to a single struggling student, and in the same exact breath, draft a bold memorandum to a government minister. Whether you are managing a corporate team, teaching a middle school class, or just trying to be a better mentor in your own community, these notes from the 19th century offer a total masterclass in leadership.
It really is a masterclass.
It is all about empathetic, scalable leadership. It's about never letting the administrative burdens, the endless paperwork, or the institutional crises erode the fundamental human connection that made you want to be a leader in the first place.
It serves as a powerful reminder that the human element isn't a messy bug in the system of leadership that needs to be ironed out. It is the system itself.
Wow. Which brings us right back to our original dilemma.
Yeah.
We started by talking about how modern organizations believe they can only scale up by becoming factories, by standardizing processes and removing the human touch for the sake of efficiency.
Right.
Don Bosco proved that you could scale a movement across 3 decades, impact government policies, rescue failing institutions, and still sit down at a banquet 30 years later and look at your former students as the apple of your eye.
Which leaves us with a fascinating tension to consider as we close. If Don Bosco's massive historical success relied so heavily on his intense personal affection and his physical presence, is it truly possible to scale a deeply personal model of education today without losing its soul? Or does every great movement eventually have to outgrow the personal touch of its founder if it wants to survive the modern world?